Oh, so one of my favorite investors, I had just made a video about AMD versus NVidia, and I love this guy. I've learned so much from Brandon, and apparently he thinks AMD's an NVIDIA killer. That's what the thumbnail said. So I gotta hear what he has to say. I have to.
Everything that you touch runs on chips. Your phone, your car, even your refrigerator, they're all powered by chips. But right now, chips are powering the biggest tech boom that we have ever seen in 20 years, and there's 3 critical companies right now that are at the center of everything: NVIDIA, AMD, and TSM. The most famous investors of all time and the richest investors of all time are putting all their money on these 3 companies because they're betting that these companies are going to drive us into the future and their cash flows are going to absolutely explode. So today I'm going to walk you through who's going to win, who might fall behind, and where I'm actually going to put my personal money to capitalize on this massive move that's happening right now. So let's go back to 2020 when we had the massive COVID shutdowns. The world was shut down and suddenly chips became everything. Automakers couldn't ship chips, PS5s were reselling for $1,000, but guess what came along? AI, and it lit a fire under the entire semiconductor industry. But here's the thing, this isn't just a trend, this is a foundation for the next industrial revolution. The 4th industrial revolution is happening right now. So right now, chips are essentially the new oil, but there's a massive supply chain and a massive scale problem that's happening right now. And that's where these 3 big players come in. So first, we're going to talk about NVIDIA because this is considered to be the grandfather of AI. This really laid the foundation for everything. So in 2015, NVIDIA was known for their gaming GPUs, and gamers loved them. They were very powerful. They were the best in the game. So gamers were buying these chips like crazy. But Wall Street, they weren't really impressed just yet. But then a massive shift happened where NVIDIA realized that their chips could process massive amounts of data in parallel to train these large language models, and then the next wave of AI, which is happening right now, to then power the future of what AI could actually be. So that made these chips perfect for training AI models. So then they went all in. They have their CUDA software, which is essentially like the iOS that runs on top of the iPhone. They partnered with hyperscalers such as Meta and Tesla and Google and Microsoft. All these companies want to build out their AI data centers like crazy, and they just can't get their hands on enough of these chips. So what happens when there's a lot of demand? The prices could go way up, and when the prices go way up, guess who's going to reap the rewards from that? NVIDIA. They're going to be able to make a lot more money. So now fast forward to today, and over 80% of the AI training runs on the NVIDIA platform, and the new Blackwell chip that just came out, and that's the chip that NVIDIA is scaling right now. There's so much demand for this chip, pretty much everybody wants to get their hands on it. So it's like, when is this gravy train of profits going to slow down for NVIDIA? Well, we'll talk about that in just a second, but right now things are looking good. So Tesla, for example, is using
I don't think it's slowing down anytime.
to train their full self-driving fleet so that this robotaxi network could go drive around the world, autonomously. And there's so much demand for these chips from NVIDIA that their profit margin is over 7.
Oh shit, I just seen all these comments. Yeah, it's for any type of curls. Any type. Bossio, do you think the feud between Elon and Trump is probably to bring back Elon and sales of Tesla after the downfall from? Nah, I don't think so. Man, that's a good question. But the way I look at it is, he's already got the woke against Tesla. Bro, my car was getting messed with every single day for like 3 months. It felt like, at least. So you already got 50% of America that hates you. And then you got MAGA that hates you too. How can that, what's the angle there? Why do you think that would be beneficial? I don't think, if you wanted it to be, and it didn't help the stock whatsoever. Tesla uses AMD chips. Doesn't it use NVIDIA as well? I'm pretty sure it uses NVIDIA as well. Because AMD doesn't have the most powerful chips by any measure when it comes to AI and robotics. Not even close, right? Let's keep listening.
76%. Just think about it. This water bottle right here, if I buy it for $1, just know that they're making 76 cents for every $1 that I buy these water bottles for. So the profit margins are astronomical. And what does that mean when profit margins are super high? Well, there's demand for that product. If there's that much demand for the product, just jack your prices up to the moon and you could just gouge these people right now while you can. But there is a little bit of competition coming right now that could be a threat for NVIDIA. So we're going to roll into AMD in just a second. And then TSM, which we're going to get into towards the end, that is the whale in the room, to be honest with you, because TSM controls everything. But here's the kicker, and this is what sets NVIDIA apart.
I don't know about that. I'm going to let you elaborate, Brandon. But, my train of thought right now is TSM manufactures the chips. They don't own or innovate the IP. They've been in position because they don't create competitive products like Samsung did. Apple creates its own products. But when it comes to the IP, that's NVIDIA all day. They control the room as of right now. TSM, sure, do they have a monopoly right now? Not a monopoly, but do they own most of the market? Yes, but they're not the only option. If NVIDIA wanted to partner with Samsung, they make chips, and there's other chip makers as well. They just haven't gotten the bulk of the work because TSMC has done things right. There's a little bit of loyalty going on here. But absolutely, if NVIDIA wanted to start creating their own chips, they could. They could start manufacturing themselves. So, I like ASML as a moat, having their, a control over everything more, because without ASML's lithography machines, TSMC couldn't exist, NVIDIA couldn't exist, all these companies couldn't exist, and no one else can make those machines. And those machines are $200 million each. Now, TSMC, sure, is it important? Yes, but there's so many companies that are thinking about what happens if China invades Taiwan. And TSMC, they're starting to open factories everywhere. They're opening in Arizona, they're opening in other countries, but it's going to take a long time for them to be able to take on the bulk to keep up with demand without Taiwan. That's just not going to happen. It's such a big part of their economy. And it's a big reason why it hasn't been invaded yet, because it's protected by so many countries. There would be, if China was to invade Taiwan right now, unless they have things under their wing, under the table that we don't know about, where they can be self-sustainable, which is practically impossible. They're not going to invade because that would literally cost them all of their growth in the next 5 to 10 years. And I don't think China wants that. I think they want to be the number one in AI, in technology, in growth. They want to skip the innovation era boom. They want to go from manufacturing straight to AI boom, where America went from agriculture, China went from agriculture to manufacturing. America went from agriculture to manufacturing to innovation and services. China wants to skip innovation and services, go straight to AI technology, to robotics and AI. And that's the future. That's where everybody's racing to. But we need each other to be part of that. So I don't know about this one. Let's keep listening, though.
They created an ecosystem which is called CUDA, which is essentially the software that runs on top of these AI chips, so that you could basically plug these chips into your business, and then you have the software already pre-built to then go run these models on your business to become more efficient. Because the whole goal of AI is to be more productive and more efficient. But if you just have all this AI compute power, but you don't know what to do with it, it's not really going to help you in your business right away. But if you have the AI power and the system to actually run it and be more efficient for your business, that is the true whale in the room, and that is a big needle mover for these businesses. So that's why everybody wants to get their hands on these NVIDIA chips. And if you're a developer for these AI applications, you're going to build on top of NVIDIA.
Let me see. Let me hear him again.
AI power and the system to actually run it and be more efficient for your business. That is the true whale in the room, and that is a big needle mover for these businesses. So that's why everybody all this AI compute power, but you don't know what to do with it, it's not really going to help you in your business right away. But if you have the AI power and the system to actually run it and be more efficient for your business, that is the true whale in the room, and that is a big needle mover for these businesses. So that's
the problem, is that NVIDIA doesn't necessarily need TSMC. They could not, obviously they wouldn't be able to meet demand. They can't meet demand now, but they could work towards not having them, and they could partner up with other chip manufacturers and figure that out. TSMC is just the player right now because they were so smart. Trust me, we went through like a freaking 4-hour rabbit hole studying TSMC.
That's why everybody wants to get their hands on these NVIDIA chips. And if you're a developer for these AI applications, you're going to build on top of NVIDIA because it's so much easier to build on top of NVIDIA versus the competition. But as you probably could have guessed, there's going to be a catch with NVIDIA, and it's that Wall Street is pricing them in like they already own the entire future, like there's going to be no other competition out there. They're trading right now at 40 to 50 times trailing earnings. So what that essentially means is this. Let's just attribute this water bottle to the whole company of NVIDIA. And let's say that this water bottle right here costs $100. Great. And you're going to say, well, this water bottle right here, if I buy it for $100, which is the whole business of NVIDIA, how much profit does this water bottle produce for me? And let's think about it. We bought it for $100, but if you're trading at a 50 PE ratio, that essentially means if you pay $100 for this water bottle, they're only generating $2 per year in profit, because $2 times 50 for the PE ratio, that's 100, and it's a $100 water bottle right here. So basically what I'm saying is this: you bought it for $100, there's only $2 per year in profit, so it's going to take you 50 years to get your initial investment back. You buy it for $100, $2 per year in profit, that's 50 years to get your initial investment back. So it's not cheap right now. So if the revenue and earnings per share keep growing massively going into the future, the stock's going to do great. But if the revenue and earnings per share happens to go down, or more competition comes, which potentially AMD is coming, which we'll talk about that in a second, the stock could go down quite a bit. So while I'm bullish on NVIDIA in the long term, this is a name that I'm not going to buy call options on. I might sell put options on it, but I'm probably just going to dollar cost average into the stock, especially when it goes down on the dips. I'm going to buy.
Wait a second.
50, get your initial investment back.
But you can't, can you? The problem with that is, and maybe I'm wrong here, Brandon might be able to help me with this. Shout out to Brandon, by the way. Again, subscribe to his channel, check out all his courses. They're amazing. The problem with that is NVIDIA could be a $10 trillion company here. Like, people say in the next 5 years. It is insane. If the Moore's law is continuously going, it is insane. That means next year you'll be able to put double the transistors in a chip, and the following year double. It's compounding so insane that you're gonna have trillions of transistors in these chips, and the amount of technology, the amount of growth that's gonna happen in the next 10 years, you're not even gonna recognize the world, because we are on that big of a, the snowball is just compounding in insane rates right now, if you understand the underlying technology. And so that's what people are really betting on. It's not just a hype train. There's real investors that are still pouring money in because they see $2 EPS, but like, you got a company that's doing crazy amounts of revenues, and they're beating it every single year, and they're beating it by 60%, 69%, 70%. Like, it's insane. So even though that might be true, that it would take you 50 years to break even in a typical business, because of the hype, because of the growth potential, because of the sector, the industry that it's in, that doesn't mean the stock price won't double in the next few years. You know what I'm saying? Like, and ultimately that's what investors care about, is the stock price going up, right? So if you can double your money in the next 3 years, for example, then the 50 years to break even is kind of irrelevant, even though it's a good metric to check. I wouldn't use that measurement with NVIDIA, right? Let's keep watching. Hold on, babe.
Back. You buy it for $100, $2 per year in profit. That's 50 years to get your initial investment back. So it's not cheap right now. So if the revenue and earnings per share keep growing massively going into the future, the stock's going to do great. But if the revenue and earnings per share happens to go down, or more competition comes, which potentially AMD is coming, which we'll talk about that in a second, the stock could go down quite a bit. So while I'm bullish on NVIDIA in the long term, this is a name that I'm not going to buy call options on. I might sell put options on it, but I'm probably just going to dollar cost average into the stock, especially when it goes down on the dips. I'm going to buy more, and when it goes up and pumps much higher, I'm just going to let my profits ride. So honestly, AMD is one of my favorite ones right now, and I always love a good underdog story, because imagine you're going to say, I'm going to compete with NVIDIA.
I missed all of that. I'm sorry.
I'm not going to buy call options on. I might sell put options on it, but I'm probably just going to dollar cost average into the stock, especially when it goes down on the dips. I'm going to buy more, and when it goes up and pumps much higher, I'm just going to let my profits ride. So
that makes
honestly,
sense.
AMD is one of my favorite.
So he's on point with that. I agree with that. I'm not like going all in to NVIDIA, but I'm going to continue to invest in it. Absolutely. And if I sell puts on it and I get assigned, I'm glad with keeping it. I'm not dollar cost averaging because I'm not buying individual stocks right now. He has a way bigger portfolio than most people do. Guy's got $1 million cash in one of his portfolios. That's one of them. So he's killing it. But yeah, dollar cost average, absolutely.
Favorite ones right now, and I always love a good underdog story, because imagine that you're going to say, I'm going to compete with NVIDIA, and NVIDIA is this massive whale in a room that has been here and done that years before you even tried to get into this field, which is the AI chips and compute stuff, and then you actually pull through and you're starting to give NVIDIA a run for the money. So AMD might be one of the best in my opinion. So in 2014, AMD was trading under $2 per share, and Wall Street pretty much gave up on them. Intel owned the CPU market, and NVIDIA was eating up the world with the GPU market. Then the CEO, Lisa Su, stepped in, and not only did she turn the company completely around, she made it a threat to all these other companies that, hey, we're here, you're not going to dominate this field any longer, we're going to develop our chips, we're going to develop the iOS, which is like the CUDA equivalent, that's going to run on top of these chips to then compete with NVIDIA. So today, AMD powers the best gaming consoles from Sony and Microsoft, which is the Xbox and the PlayStation, and their new MI300X chip is being adopted by Microsoft and Amazon. This is massive because Microsoft and Amazon are saying, we're not going to buy NVIDIA anymore because NVIDIA is price gouging us too much. And when NVIDIA price gouges us too much, we're just going to go with the competition of AMD. And the key word here is go with the competition. So when there's two competitors out there in the world,
But what chip are they getting?
Chip is being adopted by Microsoft and Amazon.
Microsoft and Amazon are using the M1300X.
This is massive because Microsoft and Amazon are saying, we're not going to buy NVIDIA anymore because NVIDIA is price gouging us too much. And when NVIDIA price gouges us too much, we're just going to go with the competition of AMD. And the key word here is go with the competition. So when there's two competitors out there in the world, what usually happens, they're going to compete for price and they're going to compete for quality. So this is actually going to be great for companies like Amazon and Microsoft and Tesla and whoever else wants to build out their data centers, because they now have competition out there. And when there's competition, they're usually going to get more bang for their buck. NVIDIA and AMD are going to compete on price, but they're also going to have to deliver the highest quality and the most compute power for the price. So that's good for the end user. But for AMD and NVIDIA, it might not be so good. So that's why we have to talk about TSM at the end, which is the absolute whale in the room, because they're probably going to win either way. But here's the thing about AMD. They don't manufacture.
So I hate to do this, but I have to. Because that was weird to me, because all the research that I've done, I've not heard anyone saying they're not buying NVIDIA no more. NVIDIA can't keep up with their sale orders. And so no, it says no, Microsoft and Amazon have not stopped buying NVIDIA chips, but both companies continue to invest heavily in NVIDIA's AI hardware, though they have adjusted some orders in response to new product releases and technical considerations. So, AMD is trying to chip away at NVIDIA's market share in the GPU space, in the AI space, right? It's not going to happen. They don't have the technology that NVIDIA has, but because they're more cost effective in some of their chips, Microsoft and Amazon have started adjusting their purchases for things that don't need the power NVIDIA has. It makes complete sense. But to clarify, Amazon, especially AWS with their cloud computing, they have not halted any NVIDIA chip orders. Instead, AWS transitions its Project Seba, a joint AI supercomputer initiative with NVIDIA, from the Grace Hopper chips to the newer Blackwell GPUs, which offer enhanced performance. So they actually added new products to their orders, right? AWS continues to utilize NVIDIA's Hopper chips for other services and remains a significant customer of NVIDIA's AI hardware. The Blackwell chips are the chips that US are running, like they need it. It's the latest advancements in AI processing. Same thing with Microsoft. But for tasks that don't need that type of power, if they can save the cost, they'll buy some AMD, right? And even Microsoft remains one of NVIDIA's largest customers. They reportedly purchased 485,000 Hopper GPUs. That's 20% of NVIDIA's annual revenue. And that's not changing anytime soon. Now, another reason why Microsoft and Amazon and some other major tech companies started increasing buying AMD chips, just because they increase AMD chips doesn't mean they decrease NVIDIA. Remember, the demand for AI is growing, and it's not going to slow anytime soon with robotics and autonomous driving and all of that, right? So two things can be true. They could be increasing their orders with NVIDIA, which they are because of the Blackwell chips, but they can also be increasing AMDs. And they're increasing AMDs for what we said, to save costs on things, just like Brandon was saying, from my understanding, but it's also to diversify and reduce their reliance on NVIDIA, which every business does. Because you never know what could happen. And you know, AMD is starting to chip. They're trying to grow their technology. It's going to be, they're never going to catch up, I don't think. I mean, they could. They're a great company. Love the CEO. We went through the rabbit hole of checking out, you know, the history of the company, checking out the history of the CEO. She's amazing. And she's been into chips since she was a child. Like it's crazy. She was a genius as a child. And a lot of people don't know this. Her and the CEO of NVIDIA, Huang, they're distant cousins. They're related. What are the odds, right? And so, you know, it makes total sense to diversify, but they're not diversifying in a way where they're taking away from here to put more into there, right? AMD's M1300X is competitive for AI. They launched those in late 2023, and they're designed for large language LLMs, right? And they offer high memory capacity and performs well on inference tasks. Microsoft is already using these chips in Azure AI services. AMD confirmed this in its earnings calls. And so the AMD chips are generally less expensive than the H100s from NVIDIA or the upcoming Blackwell GPUs. And so for cloud providers like AWS and Azure, this translates into higher margins or lower customer prices. Now, AMD is more open to custom silicon collaborations. They support open software stacks, which some developers prefer over NVIDIA's CUDA ecosystem. They've improved their power and efficiency. But you know, I see AMD growing. Don't get me wrong. It's growing, but it's like there's levels. And I think the comparison would be something like Nike as a sneaker company versus like OnCloud in the early days or even now. You know, OnCloud is booming and it's going to grow, but Nike's the guy, the dog, Nike and Adidas, right? Let me see a better analogy. All right, so this is a better analogy. Shout out to ChatGPT for helping me with this because I ain't that smart. Imagine Microsoft and Amazon are like massive construction companies building futuristic skyscrapers. NVIDIA is like the top of the line power drill, expensive, powerful, and essential for the toughest parts of the build, like training massive AI models. While AMD is like a high quality wrench set. Damn, not as flashy, but extremely useful, more affordable, and better suited for certain tasks, like running AI applications efficiently at scale. So what's happening? These companies aren't replacing the power drill, NVIDIA. They're just making sure their workers have a full toolbox, adding AMD so they can build faster, save costs where possible, and avoid delays if one tool is in short supply. Customize the job based on tasks. Yeah, this makes total sense. AMD is going to boom. NVIDIA is going to boom. And you know what? Brandon's changing my mind because I was thinking like it was an opportunity cost if you bought AMD instead of NVIDIA, where no, they are both essential. They are both important for this AI boom. So I'm enlightened, bro.
Manufacture their own chips, and neither does NVIDIA. They use TSM to build their chips. So they're essentially just designing their chips, and they send the blueprints to TSM, and then they essentially say, hey, TSM, go build this chip for us. So AMD understands that they're not trying to beat NVIDIA overnight, but they're just slowly carving out market share in the AI inference and low latency processing areas, which are two massive lanes that most people are ignoring right now.
Yeah.
So as AMD continues to carve that out, they're slowly taking market share of the AI data center inference also. And the key thing here about valuation versus NVIDIA,
I don't think they're taking market share. I think they're growing with the growth of the market.
AMD is much cheaper and they're actually growing at similar growth rates. So AMD is trading at around 30 times earnings, which basically means this. You buy this water bottle for $100, which is the whole company of AMD, it's going to take you 30 years to get your initial investment back versus NVIDIA would have taken you 50 years to get your initial investment back. So it is a little bit cheaper on a valuation basis, which of course I love that. So to me, AMD is kind of like buying Tesla back in 2019. People laughed, Wall Street didn't really like it, but then look what the stock of Tesla did in the meantime. It went up a lot, and yes, it was very, very volatile, but look at what it did from A to B. So if you can invest your money in AMD, forget about it for a few years, potentially sell some put options and potentially buy some leap call options, you're probably going to do very, very well. But there will be a lot of volatility in the middle of that, and you have to be able to filter all that out. Now, the whale in the room is going to be TSM. So essentially, NVIDIA and AMD, like I said, they design the chips, but TSM builds the chips and they have massive, massive market share. There's really no competition at all for TSM, and it doesn't seem like competition is coming in the near future. So TSM is Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. Some people put the C at the end and some people don't. But listen to this. They produce 92% of the world's AI chips, which is a massive, massive market share. Apple, NVidia, AMD, even Intel, they all rely on TSM to build the chips. And they're on pretty good terms with Trump right now because they just announced that they're going to spend hundreds of billions of dollars in Arizona to build out their next gen factory to build the next gen of chips. So of course, that's great. That's amazing. That's good that we can have some chip manufacturing here in the United States, because the main problem right now with TSM is that the vast majority of the chips are coming out of Taiwan, and everyone's always freaking out that China might invade Taiwan, and when they do that, the chip sector is going to get crushed and China's going to own the whole thing. It's going to cause a whole world war, all this crazy stuff, which of course is possible, but as they're diversifying where they're building these plants, which is in the US, which is the big one that's coming, that is good for TSM, and that's what we want to see. We want to see a little bit of diversification away from being so close to China. So if conflict does break out between the US and China, supply chains are going to freeze overnight, and that is the massive wild card with TSM. To be completely honest with you, I doubt that it's going to happen, but if it does happen, it will be very, very bad for the chip sector. The whole AI sector is going to get crushed. So I think about this a lot, and I talk about this in China.
Yeah. So just so you guys are aware, Samsung is a direct competitor to TSMC. They create chips just as good as TSMC. The 3 nanometers and the 5 nanometers. And I mean, TSMC, they've announced 2 nanometer, which is insane. I think that's the size of the transistors that can be in there, which means at 2 nanometers, it's insane. Like trillions of transistors, I believe, can be on a chip. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but nonetheless, the reason why Samsung lost so much market share is because they decided to make phones. That's why. They create products that compete with Apple, with Tesla, with Sony, with every company. TSMC vowed that they would never create products that would compete with their competitors. That's why they own the chip market. And Brandon's about to go into the scariest part of owning TSMC. And by the way, China has they launched their own semiconductor company called SMIC, which kind of, it almost shows like if China must believe in some way, shape, or form that they might not ever invade Taiwan. And so in parallel, they need to be making their own company that they could be self-reliant on. Even though TSMC, I believe, sells to China too. And if they don't sell to China, it's indirect because Apple makes their products in China. A lot of them, right? So it still has to see China. It still helps their economy. But aside from that, the only other company that could be a competitor to TSMC, because like Samsung is a competitor. If it wasn't for the fact that if Samsung tomorrow said, we're not making any more phones, we just want to work with all the companies that are out there, overnight, they'd probably start seeing some more market share. Okay. But Intel, they are working on 5 nanometers and better right now. They got huge investments, but it's very slow, and it's going to take a decade before Intel can even remotely come close to what TSMC does. So Brandon's got a point here.
Supply chains are going to freeze overnight, and that is the massive wild card with TSM. To be completely honest with you, I doubt that it's going to happen, but if it does happen, it will be very, very bad for the chip sector. The whole AI sector is going to get crushed. So I think about this a lot, and I talk about this with people in Discord all the time, where it's like NVIDIA versus AMD, and I keep trying to beat this in people's heads that there doesn't have to necessarily be one winner or the other. You could either buy both of them or you could buy all three, because if you buy AMD and NVIDIA, you pretty much have your bases covered from an AI chip design standpoint. And then if you buy TSM,
which ones?
You are going to be insulated because they're the only ones in the game that.
So if you really want to get all the chips, first off, if you want the manufacturers, you want ASML, you want Micron, you want ARM, you want AMD, you want TSMC, you want Samsung. If you want manufacturer plays. So if you want like brands, you want Apple. You want Samsung can be in there. You want Tesla. You want, if you want LLM, long language models, the guys who are creating the AI that's powered by these things. You want Tesla, Palantir, Anthropic, I believe it's called. There's a whole bunch, a shit ton here, right?
That could even manufacture these chips. And there are rumors that companies like Amazon and Tesla are going to build their own chips and cut AMD and NVIDIA out of the equation. But even at that, if you have TSM, those companies like Tesla and Google and Meta and Amazon, all these other companies, they're going to design their own chips, but then they're going to go send it to TSM and say, hey, can you make this for us? So in my opinion,
that's what all of them do. They design their own chips and they already send it to TSMC. So that's already done. But I could see, the same way Tesla went to make batteries. If they can't get what they want, they'll make their own stuff. They can. But yeah, that's already happening.
TSM is the most insulated company out of all of them, and that's why I have a lot of money invested in TSM right now. I have shares, I have sold puts. I'm very bullish on TSM for the long run.
I like
again,
TSM.
There is going to be a lot of volatility in the meantime. So you don't necessarily need to pick the one big winner. I would personally just buy all three and just be very, very patient with it. Maybe split that part of your portfolio, a third, and a third, because you will capture a lot of upside as the years go on by holding those three companies. But here's the critical thing. Chips, they're not just a trend. This is critical infrastructure. And the companies that are controlling the design and the manufacturing of these chips, they're going to control the future. So thanks for watching all the way to the end of this video. Make sure you like and subscribe if you found this information useful.
Great advice. Great advice. If you've not checked out, my deep dives on all of these, I need to come up with that list again, but I wrote down what each of them are. When it comes to the actual components, I mean, you can go as deep as, if you really want whoever sells the shovel, you want to buy the company that mines silicone. Nobody talks about this. I'm not really sure why. But all of these chips are literally made from sand, quartz sand, and rocks. And the best sand is actually in Ottawa, Illinois, believe it or not. There's a company called GSM and another one called, there's a few of them. So check this out. Here's a list of them. All of these chips, all of them are made from silicone. And until that changes, these are the guys selling the shovel. GSM, not the greatest financials, but not horrible. And they're going to keep growing. They're one of the world's largest producers of silicone metals and alloys. You have Globe's specialty metals. I'm not sure if it's public companies only. Yeah, so you have SLCA, Silica Holdings. That's in Texas, right? Which is exactly what we need. Quartz. That's the sand, the silica that they use for semiconductors. You have Dow, which is in Michigan, silicone-based products, not pure silicone metal. Automotive, electronics. I got to look deeper into this one. But so far, GSM and SLCA seem like the ones. But I think SLCA is private now. I'm pretty sure that's private now. Could be wrong. But that's even, we can go, that deep where we need the miners, right? Those companies. We need the ones who make the chips, who design the chips, or the brands. The brands are the ones who pretty much do the R&D and design them. Chips manufacturers, right? And then you need the LLM, or the people that are creating the code, the languages that are being processed by all the technology. And then you make a list of the companies in each of these categories, and you just make sure you have some exposure into them. And one great way of doing that, let's see. I want exposure to the AI and robotics. Boom. The silicone miners, chips manufacturers, brands, and IP owners, companies, etc. through an ETF. Can you give me some options? So let's see what we have here. So here's a breakdown of ETF options that offer exposure to different parts of the AI and robotics value chain, including silicone miners, chip manufacturers, robotics hardware, software and LLM developers, IP owners, and major AI platforms. And so you have ETFs like bots. Top holdings is NVidia, Intuitive Surgical, Keyent. Never heard of those, but we can look into those. Meta's obviously in their Alphabet. So you can look at all of these and see if any of these make any sense, and then you can have exposure to all of them. You know what I mean? So that's one way you could do it. I would probably put my kids, put some of these in my kids' Roth IRAs, So